Hello friends, it's Kayla. Welcome to my book haul. It's been about 6 weeks since I've done one and I feel like that's pretty good timing to accumulate a good portion of books. I think I have 40 here. This book haul is sponsored by DK Books to support the publication of Allies, which is out today. I'm filming from a new angle today. Let me know if it's okay for you. I spent all day yesterday reorganizing my bookshelf and my back hurts, and the last thing I want to do is sit on the floor. So I'm sitting over here in the corner and I have all my books ready to go, organized by genre because there's so many to get through. The biggest chunk of them is thrillers, which is exciting because it's fall, or it's fall soon, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on. So we're going to go in order of nonfiction, horror, thriller, fantasy, sci-fi, contemporary, just so you know, so you can hop around to whatever you're most interested in. Grab your coffees. It's going to be a long one. I bought so many books from Value Village this month. I had a lot of success thrifting and going to little free libraries, and I had a couple pre-orders come in, and it's gonna be a good time together. So first up, we have this Allies Real Talk About Showing Up, Screwing Up, and Trying Again. This is edited by Shakira Bourne and Dana Allison Levy, who also have essays in here, along with 17 best-selling YA authors. I've read from so many of these people in fiction. This is my first time reading nonfiction of theirs, which is very cool. There's such a range of experiences in here, from being an ally to yourself, to your own community, to others. There are experiences of racism, conversations about disability, personal stories about messing up as an ally, improving when it's time to speak out yourself, when it's time to pass the mic. I'm 2/3 of the way through it right now. I'm really enjoying it. I just ended off on Adiba Jagadar's essay, which has been my favorite so far, and I just am always geeking out about the organization of an anthology like this because I love when they're smartly organized, and I feel that way about this one so much because there have been a couple conversations that have come up and I kept having these thoughts and ideas and things that I wanted to talk about in my review at the end of the month. And then I read Adiba's, who's one of my favorite authors, and she like summed up everything that I was thinking, especially this part that says, and in the world that we live in, there's this idea that if you're problematic, you're a bad person, but we're all learning and growing. There's so many personal experiences covered about like what people have done wrong, what they need to do better in the future, how you can be a better ally. And a lot of it comes back to this idea of like, I'm scared to do this because I don't want to get it wrong. This book is for everyone. There's something for everyone, but I would especially recommend this as a gift to the teens in your life. There's one specific part in here that I read from Brendan Keeley, which I think every teenage boy should read, because there's all of this conversation about misogyny and consent and like how boys talk about girls when they're not around, and this whole notion of boys will be boys. Haven't gotten to the end yet, but I know that there are also resources at the end, so like organizations, book recommendations, website recommendations, self-reflection prompts, and bonus, it's just as beautiful as the dust jacket underneath. So I'm super stoked to finish this. I would encourage you to pick it up, and I'll put the link down below so you can find it at a store near you. The other nonfiction I have are We Need to Talk About Money by Otega Uegba. I have her book behind me somewhere that I talk about all the time. It's called Little Black Book, and I think it's something that everybody should read if you're going into a creative field, like right after high school. I think it has some really great tips. And then this one is all about just money in general and like the workforce. It covers misogynistic men getting pay rises, getting evicted, about class and privilege and racism and beauty, about shame and pride, compulsion and fear. I had to order this from Book Depository because I don't think it's available in Canada. I'm assuming because a lot of it probably has to do with her experience in the UK, so a lot of the conversations will probably revolve around that, but I'm sure it translates perfectly to other places, and I just love everything she has to say. So I picked that up, and then I was sent by Indigo a stack of their favorite books so far this year, one of them being Call Me Indian by Fred Sisakamoose, who was the NHL's first treaty Indigenous player. I don't know a lot about him, but my love for NHL makes me pick up quite a few like hockey player memoirs. It says this groundbreaking memoir sheds piercing light on Canadian history and Indigenous politics and follows this extraordinary man's journey to reclaim pride in an identity and a heritage that have previously been used against him. I know he had a big impact on his community and helped establish a lot of athletic programs for kids. So I'm looking forward to giving this a read and reading about his legacy. Next up, what did I say? Horror. So I had a couple pre-orders arrive in the mail. One of them is All's Well by Mona Awad, which I'm currently reading and will be in a vlog. It's also the Literally Dead book club pick for September. You have plenty of time to read it, and the Goodreads group has it divided up into like part 1, part 2, part 3. So if you want to read it and talk about it while you're reading it with other people, I'll link that down below. This is about a woman with chronic pain, and she's putting on a production of All's Well That Ends Well, but her cast is hell-bent on doing Macbeth instead. There's a lot of interesting conversation already about believing women's pain, also privilege and corruption, because there are certain things going on in her school and her place of work that's impacting her ability to do her job. I really don't know where it's going, but I think it'll be a very interesting conversation with me and my co-hosts and all of you at the beginning of October. Next up, My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. I'm so excited. The reviews are already rolling in for this, and they're very mixed, so we will see how it goes. This one is about a high school senior named Jade, and she is obsessed with horror movies. She lives next to Indian Lake, home of Camp Blood, which is the site of a massacre from years ago. And now she has to use her knowledge of films and survival to survive the slasher that's in her own town. And I think that one will be a fun read as well. Next up, one I already read is called Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. This takes place in a chat room in the early 2000s between two women who succumb to their most horrific desires. That's how you'd sum it up. It's very short. You can't say anything more than that. The tone is very interesting. Next up, I grabbed Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. This was such a good thrift store find. And then I also came upon the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix, which I've already read. So Horror Store, what is this about? I have no idea. I think it just takes place in like an IKEA type area. It's called Orsk Furniture, rather. And there are 3 employees volunteering to work a dusk till dawn shift. It's a psychological terror, and I think kind of a non-traditional haunted house story. I've been told I'm gonna love that for years. And I did enjoy the Southern Book Club's guide. I think I gave this 4 stars. It's about a vampire who moves to town, and there's like a book club of all of these women, and he forces himself into this group. It's very fun and scary. I don't get scared very often, but I remembered this. I had me on the edge of my seat. I read it last year in the Goodreads Choice Awards thing. Speaking of vampires, I also grabbed this. I pick up so many anthologies and I don't read them quick enough, as quick as I'm buying them. But this one says, Never Get Old, Tales with Fresh Bite. Some of the authors in here are Samira Ahmed, Danielle Clayton, Tessa Granton, Heidi Heilig, Julie Murphy, Mark Ashiro, Rebecca Roanhorse, Laura Ruby, V.E. Schwab, Kayla Whaley. Kayla Whaley also had an essay in here that was one of my favorites. Zoraida Cordova and Natalie C. Parker. Most of those authors I've read from before. I've talked about how I want to read more vampire things, and I think a short story collection is just what I need. Now let's move on to thrillers. This is by far my largest stack and more success that I had thrifting. So I grabbed The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. Everyone has told me that if I've already read The Guest List, which I have, this one isn't as good. It seems they're similar enough plots that like her writing just improved and you don't really need to read her older things, but it was $2.99. So I just grabbed it. We're in the remote Scottish wilderness, and there's a whole bunch of narrators. The beautiful one, the golden couple, the volatile one, the new parents, the quiet one, the city boy, the outsider. One of these friends is a murderer, and one won't make it out alive. Dun dun dun! Next up, I picked up The Shadows by Alex North. This was like a new release that everyone was so excited about this year. I didn't pick it up full price because The Whisper Man was just okay for me. Just kidding, it came out last year. But I always said I'd be down to pay a couple dollars for it at the thrift store, and then it was there. Maybe this is more horror than thriller. It's got that trope of like 25 years ago there was a mystery. Nowadays we're finding out the truth. Teenager Charlie Crabtree committed a murder so shocking that it's attracted the strange kind of infamy that only exists in the darkest corners of the internet and has inspired more than one copycat. Then we have Paul, a detective, home for the first time. This sounds very similar to The Whisper Man. If anybody read both of them, was this one anybody's favorite? Next up, I keep seeing this one everywhere and I refuse to hear anything about it. I just know that people are loving it and so I bought it. It's called In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. I only read this. 6 friends, 1 college reunion, 1 unsolved murder. Again, the trope I'm sure of like 10, 15, 20 years later, this group of friends comes back together and they all find out what really happened back in the day. Next, I grabbed My Lovely Wife. I already had a copy of this, but it was the ARC, so now I can retire that one, pass it along. And I have the final copy. My Lovely Wife is a murdering wife-husband duo, but do both of them really know what's really going on? Coffee break. Next up, an author I've read from, again, once before. This is Temper by Lane Fargo. I didn't even know Lane Fargo had, what is this hair? Didn't know Lane Fargo had any other books. We read They Never Learn. Can I see it on my shelf and pull it out for you? There it is. We read this for the Literally Dead Book Club a couple months ago. Seriously, what's happening? And I enjoyed it so much. I gave it 4.5 stars, so I just grabbed this, knowing absolutely nothing about it. Let's find out. After years of struggling in the Chicago theater scene, ambitious actress Kara finally lands the role of a lifetime. She's starring in Temper, and that means working with this guy who's a director known for pushing his performers past their limits. There's a twisted relationship and a shocking secret about the upcoming production. Next up, I have The Push by Ashley O'Drain, which I found at Value Village, and also a copy was sent to me from Indigo as part of their like favorite books of the year. I don't know if this is more thriller or more like intense motherhood drama, or maybe somewhere in between, but I've just heard amazing things about it, and from people all across the board of like what type of genre they typically read, everyone seems to be loving this. We're following a woman named Blythe who isn't connecting with her baby the way she expects. She's convinced that something is wrong with her, maybe it's all in her head. Then she has another child and she has a natural maternal connection with him. It says it's an utterly immersive novel that will challenge everything you think you know about motherhood. Oh my, I'm in. Next up, I grabbed The Wrong Family by Taryn Fisher. I can't really remember what people have been saying about this. I know a lot of people really hated The Wives, and I now can't remember what rating I gave it. I have enjoyed and hated Taryn Fisher books, and I'll just keep picking them up. Juno was wrong about Winnie Crouch. Before moving in with the Crouch family, Juno thought Winnie and her husband were perfect, the perfect son, the perfect life. Now that she's living in this beautiful house, she sees the cracks in the crumbling facade. Then she hears a chilling conversation between Winnie and Nigel. She shouldn't get involved. She really shouldn't, but this could be her chance to make some things right. I don't understand what that means. Am I gonna read it? Yes. Next up, A Mary Kubica. This seems to be everybody's favorite Mary Kubica, and I just feel justified in picking up every single Mary Kubica. I've supported Mary Kubica from the first arc of her first ever book. There have been a lot of mixed feelings over the years and a lot of ratings all across the board, and I just like, this is everyone's favorite, objectively. The best book that she's written. Everybody says it. And now I just can't wait to read it. So it's called Local Woman Missing. Did I say that? It's about a local woman who's missing. Her name's Shelby. Oh, and then not long after, Meredith and her 6-year-old daughter also disappear. Are these incidents connected? After an elusive search that yields more questions than answers, the case eventually goes cold. Now, 11 years later, Delilah shockingly returns. It sounds like a pretty typical mystery. Woman disappears, comes back. Is it really her? What stories does she have to tell? What happened while she was gone? I feel like I've read that plot a lot, so we'll see. We'll see what happens with it. Next up, I picked up Her Three Lives by Kate Houlihan. I read this Kate Houlihan and gave it 3 stars, I think. So I'm excited to just give her another go. We're also following a character named Jade in this one. Is Jade the new mystery woman name? It used to be Rachel. Now maybe it's Jade. Jade Thompson has it all. She's an upcoming social media influencer. She's a beautiful new home, successful architect for a fiance, but there's trouble behind the scenes. Definitely excited this fall to get back to my roots with domestic thrillers. But it says her private life, her secret life, her public life. Very interesting. Next up, a similar cover, No Going Back by Sheena Kamal. This is the 3rd book in the Nora Watts trilogy. I think it's a trilogy. I read the first one with all of you, really enjoyed it for the Literally Dead Book Club. I have the 2nd one on my shelf, and this is the 3rd one. Just in case I love the 2nd one, I'm excited to have the 3rd one on deck. Grabbed it on sale, as you do. Not gonna read this, because I don't want to know anything too soon. But the first book is about a woman who gave her child up for adoption, and then years and years later she gets a call saying that she needs to help find her because she has gone missing. Next is another polarizing one. It's The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. Hear me out. Some people love this, and the people that I've seen love this tend to not like The Silent Patient, and I too didn't like The Silent Patient. And it seems to be the people who love The Silent Patient who hated this one. So I know that everyone's trying to convince me not to read this right now, and there's so many negative reviews floating around. And I just wonder, I'm curious, and I'm also reading it for a video. So it says it's a psychological suspense. We're following a Greek tragedy professor at Cambridge University, which is something recently that I've loved picking up, is following professors and teachers. There's a secret society called the Maidens, and there's murder. I don't want to know anything more. I also picked up 9 Perfect Strangers by Liane Moriarty, which I didn't plan on picking up because I loved Big Little Lies so much. But I haven't read anything else from her that has really done it for me. But this recently got turned into a TV show, and the adaptation of Big Little Lies is one of my favorite things. So I'm just very curious, and I'm obviously not going to watch it without reading it. Somebody left their Indigo receipt in here. They paid $38 for this, and then I got it at Value Village for $3.99. I hope they read it and enjoyed it. Anyway, it's about 9 people who are gathering at a remote health resort. It's hard to pin down exactly what Liane Moriarty writes. Like, it's intense domestic stuff, but it sometimes is like mysterious and thrillery, but it doesn't look like a thriller, and I want her to write like dark, intense thrillers. But I just saw the words 10 years later, so I don't know anything, and I think I want to go into this in that way. Next, let's do some SFF. Science fiction fantasy. First off, I got sent Where the Drowned Girls Go by Shannon McGuire from Tor. Thank you so much. They send me the next installment every single year of the Wayward Children Eleanor West series. In this one, we're following Cora, and Cora gets transferred to a different school. So instead of being in the home for wayward children, she gets put into a school run by someone named Whitethorn, and Cora will discover that not all doors are welcoming. I've loved just about every book in this series, so that's gonna be very exciting to read. Probably end of the year, or the first thing that I read in 2022. Next up, I found The Minders by John Mars, another book where we have many characters and they all narrate what seems like pretty short chapters. In this story, we have 5 people who are called Minders. They are transformed by revolutionary medical procedures, the latest weapon in thwarting cyber terrorism. The 5 know every secret, the truth behind every government lie, conspiracy theory, and cover-up. In return, they're given the chance to leave their problems behind with a blank slate and start their lives anew. This was a 2020 release. I haven't heard much about it at all, but I was excited to find it. Next up, another sci-fi is called Inside a Silver Box by Walter Mosley. I haven't read a Walter Mosley since, I want to say, high school. And this says, the silver box is the most destructive and powerful entity in the universe, and its former master, an alien race known as the Laz, is desperate to control it once more. 2 people must join together to protect the human race from destruction at the hands of the Laz. For the silver box will stop at nothing to prevent its former master from returning to being, even if it means destroying the earth itself. I really like this cover. I think it looks cool. Next up, of course, I grabbed Magic for Liars by Sarah Gailey after I read Upright Women Wanted and that one that has something to do with magic. And then I recently read The Echo Wife and absolutely loved it. I was like, let's do it. Let's continue. I don't know when I'm actually going to get around to this, but the cover is very interesting. We're following a character named Ivy who was born without magic, never wanted it. She has an almost sustainable career as a private investigator, an empty apartment, and a slight drinking problem. Ivy doesn't in any way wish she was like Tabitha, her estranged, magically gifted twin sister. Ivy Gamble is a liar. I have no idea what happens in here, but I grabbed it. One of my most exciting finds is Mirrorland. This is by Carol Johnstone, and Stephen King blurbed it. I think this is a 2020 release. It was in perhaps my most anticipated, and then I just forgot about it. Oh, it's 2021. Was it on my most anticipated list this year? I don't know. I know I've talked about it and then I forgot about it. This says it has startling twists like Gone Girl and the emotional power of Room. It's a thrilling psychological suspense novel about twin sisters. I love twins. Maybe this is just a thriller. I thought it was sci-fi because maybe I thought that it was about clones. As girls, they invented Mirrorland, a dark imaginary place under the pantry stairs full of pirates, witches, and clowns. One of the twins mysteriously disappears. The other one is forced to return to their home that hasn't changed in 20 years. It's full of shadowy corners, and at every turn, Kat finds herself stumbling on long-held secrets and terrifying ghosts from the past. And Elle has left clues in every room. A treasure hunt that leads back to Mirrorland, where she knows the truth lies crouched and waiting. Okay, it doesn't say anything about being paranormal or sci-fi. It is giving hints at like being haunted and ghosty, but I don't think it's actually gonna end up that way. It probably is just a true thriller. So I probably should have put it in the other category. Next, I picked up The Beautiful Ones by Sylvia Moreno Garcia and Etherbound by E.K. Johnston. Both of these I actually didn't pick up in the last 6 weeks, but I read them in the last 6 weeks and revealed them to you, so I haven't hauled them yet because it was in like a secret TBR video. This one is a space opera. It's terrible. I don't even want to talk about it. This is The Beautiful Ones, which is incredible, and I want to talk about it. It's about socialites. It's about telekinesis. It's about, what's it called? The grand season where women have their debuts and they're supposed to get married. Mina is fighting against certain expectations on her, but also is falling in love with somebody who also has magic. What now? I don't know what category to put all of these in. I feel like contemporary, literary, just more realistic stuff. But as I read the synopses, I might change my mind about the category they're supposed to be in. First up, I picked up The House on Mango Street, which I've already read a couple times, and I appreciate this cover art, but I wanted this cover art so I can pass this along. This is the 25th anniversary edition, and it's told in a series of vignettes about a Latina girl growing up in Chicago, inventing for herself who and what she will become. That's a great way to explain it. This one is There's Something About Sweetie by Sandy Menon. It's a YA romance between Ashish and Sweetie. This apparently has really great fat rep. This one is called His Only Wife by Peace Adzomedi, a Reese's Book Club pick, which usually doesn't do it for me and make me pick things up, but I've heard really good things about this one. It's about a young seamstress in Ghana. She's been convinced to marry a man she does not know. And it says it's a witty, smart, and moving debut novel about a brave young woman traversing the minefield of modern life with its taboos and injustices. Sorry, I wanted to look up how to pronounce that for sure. This was originally recommended to me in a message from Adriana from Reading Beyond Reality. We have very similar taste in the books we pick up. We don't always rate the same, but I find myself reading a ton of the same things as her. So she told me I absolutely had to read this. She said it was weird, confusing, and suspenseful, and had a lot of interesting societal commentary. I know that this is like about a family on vacation, but it's also about just like the moment that we live in, whatever that means. So I'm definitely taking this recommendation. I think she might actually be the reason that I picked up The Push 2, one of the people who loved it. Next up, I picked up both of these books from Eden Robinson. I read Monkey Beach by Eden Robinson for a video and really enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite books that I've read so far this year, I think. But I was trying to decide which Eden Robinson to read for that video, and I ended up just buying Son of a Trickster. What happened first is I went to the bookstore and I picked up Return of the Trickster, which I assumed was the first book in the series because I saw it like first thing I walked into Mosaic Books and it was just sitting there. So I was like, oh, this is the Eden Robinson that was recommended to me, and then I brought it home and it was the wrong one, but I kept it anyway and then bought Son of a Trickster. So now I have 2 books in this series, so that means I definitely have to read it because I bought the second book full price. I think this is the second book. Maybe it's the third book. Anyway, this is about a 16-year-old who has an immense capacity for compassion and an impulse to watch over people. Puzzles over why his maternal grandmother has never liked him, why she says he isn't human, that he's the son of a trickster. Also, ravens have begun to speak to him even when he's not stoned. You think you know Jared, but you don't. It's a coming-of-age novel in which teen existence crashes up against indigenous beliefs, crazy family dynamics, and cannibalistic river otters. I don't know what I'm getting into here. And I know I put it in the contemporary section because I don't know if this is metaphorical or if this is some actual magical stuff. But with much of the indigenous literature that I've read, it does like fit in between very intentionally. So one of the other books that Indigo sent me is the final revival of Opal and Nev. Of the 10 they sent me, I held on to some of them. I tried some of them and have passed those along. This one I still haven't given a go. It's tough because I don't love books about fame traditionally, but I love books about music. And all of my favorite movies have to do with music, and I want to love books like this, and like I want to love Daisy Jones and the Six, but I know because I already have this established distaste for this theme, I don't really know how to pick up these books and read them without you being like, why are you reading this type of book again? So maybe I'll read them and just not tell you about them until and if I like them. I've heard such good things about this year, so I don't know. Opal is a fiercely independent young woman pushing against the grain in her style and attitude, a black punk artist before her time, coming of age in Detroit. Neville Charles is a British singer-songwriter, and he discovers her at a bar's amateur night. She takes him up on his offer to make rock music together, and it sets off a chain of events that will not only change the lives of those she loves, but also be a deadly reminder that repercussions are always harsher for women, especially black women who dare to speak their truth. I'm gonna try it. I'll let you know, maybe, what I thought. Next up, I'm so excited. I found this, The Stars and the Blackness Between Them. This has been recommended to me a lot, especially by Jessie. This is by Janata Petrus Nasa. And I think that I thought that this was speculative just because of the way that people have told me I'm gonna love it, but then I don't feel like this mentions anything about magic. It says, Port of Spain, Trinidad, Audra is heartbroken having just found out she's going to live in America. And then Minneapolis, USA, Mabel is staring at a picture of Whitney Houston deep in her own feels about her girl Jada and that moment they had in the woods, about the vague sense of illness she's had all summer. Mabel falls hard and fast for Audrey. She's determined to help the beautiful but low-key nerdy girl from the Caribbean to find her way in America. Never an easy thing for a black woman, as Mabel knows. But their romance takes a turn when the test results reveal exactly why Mabel has been feeling sick all summer. Oh, here it says it's an Afrofuturistic, magical, ancestral love oracle book. I don't know what I'm fully getting into, but I really want to read it. I think this is stunning. And I love the title. It's one of my favorite titles ever. Next up, I picked up Eileen by Ottessa Moshfegh. This has been on my radar for years. I know I borrowed it from the library at one point. Maybe it was because I was going to read it for a video and then I didn't. We're following Eileen, who's her alcoholic father's caretaker. She dreams of escaping to the big city. And the bright, beautiful, and cheery Rebecca St. John arrives on the scene. And her affection for Rebecca ultimately pulls her into complicity in a crime that surpasses her wildest imaginations. Next up, this is The First Day of Spring by Nancy Tucker. I don't actually remember anything about it. This might have been a thriller and should have been earlier, but the cover feels more contemporary, literary. But as I was thrift shopping, a lot of the books I grabbed are ones that I'd heard of, and then there were these two that I read the back of. I actually read the back of some books in the thrift store. I don't typically do that. And I just picked some things out that I've never heard anybody talk about. So Chrissy is 8 and she has a secret. She just killed a boy. Okay, it's a thriller. Now it's 20 years later and Chrissy is living under a different name, doing all she can to forget who she used to be. And she herself has a 5-year-old daughter now named Molly. And I have no idea where it goes from there. But again, the 15, 20 years later, like that's all I ever want in a book. I'm gonna have to do a recommendation video about that at some point, because there are some good ones and there are some very bad ones who do that. This one is called The Lesser Blessed by Richard Van Camp. It says, in this powerful and often very funny first novel, Richard Van Camp gives us one of the most original teen characters in fiction. Skinny as spaghetti, nervy and self-deprecating, Larry is an appealing mix of bravado and vulnerability. His past holds many terrors: an abusive father, blackouts from sniffing gasoline, an accident that killed several of his cousins. But through his friendship with Johnny, he's ready now to face his memories and his future. It's an eye-opening depiction of what it is to be a young native man in the age of AIDS, disillusionment with Catholicism, and a growing world consciousness. It just sounds intriguing. Next up, I grabbed Less by Andrew Sean Greer, which is a Pulitzer Prize winning author. national bestseller. I've been recommended this many times, but I know nothing about it, and then I saw it in a little free library and I just grabbed it. I really just grabbed it and didn't know anything. You are a failed novelist about to turn 50. A wedding invitation arrives in the mail. Your boyfriend of the past 9 years is engaged to someone else. You can't say yes, it would be too awkward, and you can't say no, it would look like defeat. On your desk are invitations to half-baked literary events around the world. Question, how do you arrange to skip town? Answer, you accept them all. What could possibly go wrong? Thus begins an around the world in 80 days fantasia that will take novelist Arthur Less to Mexico, Italy, Germany, Morocco, India, and Japan, and put thousands of miles between him and the plight he refuses to face. Interesting. This has been recommended to me, and every time I make a video that's like my favorite things in books, this gets recommended. I don't remember in what capacity or what the reasoning is behind it, but I'm intrigued. And then lastly, I have Indians on Vacation by Thomas King. I picked up a lot of books from him, and most of them are nonfiction. This one I think came out last year, and it says, meet Bird and Mimi in this brilliant new novel. Inspired by a handful of old postcards sent by Uncle Leroy nearly 100 years before, Bird and Mimi attempt to trace the journey of Mimi's long-lost uncle and the family medicine bundle he took with him to Europe. By turns witty, sly, and poignant, this is an unforgettable tale of one couple's holiday trip to Prague and beyond, where their wanderings through the European capitals reveal a complicated history, both personal and political. And that's it. Those are the 40 books that came into my life in the last 6 weeks. Or I've had them for longer, but they just finally are having their moment to be featured. Thank you so much for watching, and again, thank you to DK Books for sponsoring this, sending me allies. I will provide the link down below again for you to check this out, and I will see you all later. Bye!